It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Someone in class recently asked me a question. How, as a leader, can you instill Agile principles and help the team become better and help yourself become better at implementing Agile? And I thought that was a great idea. I said, I even went as far as to say, I think this is a future stemming podcast episode. And here I am. So let me give you the top 6 things that you can do to apply so that as a leader, you can become more effective for your Agile teams. And I think these are kind of, you know what? I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it the top 6 character traits that you need to be a strong Agile leader. So here we go. Number 1, right out of the gate, I'm sure all of you are already mouthing it, communication. You can use any way in the world to communicate. It could be via email, carrier pigeon, semaphore. I don't care how you do it, right? Morse code, if you can find somebody out there who's alive that still knows how to do it. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes our communication is lacking. And I used is lacking together to put emphasis on Slack. Or we're using Teams, or we're using whatever the tool may be. And while these communications are great because they're convenient, and I'm doing air quotes when I say convenient here, they don't necessarily give you the right level of communication at the right times in certain situations. So I think part of this is we need to scale back for a moment and understand that face-to-face communications is always better. It's always preferred. But if we don't have face-to-face communications, what are our alternatives? And how can we as leaders ensure that not only are we communicating with the teams, but that the teams have the right tools that they need to communicate with one another, and that they're not missing out on valuable information because they're not using the right tool to figure things out. Okay, so I think I can beat communication to death here. Communication is the key to success in 99% of things. All right, let's go to number 2. So tip number 2, work on collaboration. This sounds interesting, but there's a difference between working closely with your team and helping build partnerships throughout a project and micromanaging. There, I said it. So I think it's important for you to work closely with your team and collaborate and involve the team in all your planning, designing, testing, reviewing, any of those things. At least make sure you have representation from the team present and make sure they're included as part of the conversation. Now, does that mean every person needs to be in every conversation every time? Absolutely not, because if you do that, you're going to also be in a situation where you're not being as agile as you possibly could be because you're trying to get too many people involved at too many different levels at too many different times, and it's actually going to weaken your communication. It's going to weaken the collaboration. So I think that part of it is having a plan in place for who's going to be involved at which stages of implementation, and making sure you stick to that plan, and make sure you leverage things like code repositories, workflows, any type of tool that you'd be using to help govern and manage your Agile project. Don't rely on it to create the way that you do work, but do rely on it to help govern or help manage how you will better implement products and services. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't let the tool drive your process, but make sure you have a good enough tool that it can support your process and give you the repository of information necessary in order for you to make good critical decisions in a timely manner. Okay. Tip number 3, understand feedback and give feedback. You can seek feedback from your customers. You can seek feedback from stakeholders. You can seek feedback from just about anyone. But then how you process that feedback and what you offer in return is probably one of the most critical components that you can do for your team. Because if you give regular constructive feedback to the people who are building your products or services, that's going to help make your products and services better. It's going to help people feel like, that they're not just building something that's going into a black hole. They feel like they've received good information. And you want to make sure you're regularly communicating without being overly zealous of it's a form of micromanaging, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, while it's important for you to regularly communicate, you don't want to come across as being overly pushy there. That wasn't too bad, right? All right, let's go to the next one. So my next tip has to do with adaptation. we all talk about welcoming changes and requirements and feedback from our customers or stakeholders. But when you're using a tool like Jira or Trello to manage, your sprints, your backlogs, all that good stuff, you should be able to have some type of inbound request repository. There's a difference between welcoming changes and acting on welcoming changes. And that sounds weird. But you want to make sure that not only are you walking the walk, but you're talking the talk. So if you say, yeah, we welcome changes, great. We'll give people an opportunity to submit the things they'd like to see so that you can efficiently and productively handle those changes and make adaptations as you go along. Because those frequent, incremental, small changes or improvements are the things that make your product or service better. All right, let's go to number 5. Number 5 is empowerment. Teams should be built around empowered and motivated individuals who have the skills, knowledge, and experience necessary to work on a project. You need to give them an environment that they can work in that's productive. You need to support them, their needs. You need to provide them with tools, any type of physical resources they need, with training, coaching, all those things that are going to help them be successful. But then you seal the deal by trusting that they're going to do their job and that they're going to get it done without you having to micromanage it. They need to be understand their responsibilities, make decisions about those responsibilities, and they need to self-organize and self-manage their systems of work. And that is probably the biggest challenge of a leader right there. Letting go of the reins and trusting that the team's going to do the right thing is one of the most, if not the most, challenging things that a leader has to go through. So I just think it's so incredibly important for you to understand what empowerment is and how it's different than enablement. That's incredibly important. And then finally, number 6, delivery. The teams can deliver products or services all day long, but if what they're delivering doesn't work or it doesn't solve the end stakeholders or customers' needs, you need to make sure that your focus on delivery is that you're providing the team with tools necessary to deploy, host, or scale products or services, but that you're also making sure that each increment of delivery is meaningful. And I think that's one of the keys. And that's something that people miss out a lot on. They say, yeah, we're going to deliver these 100 things. That's great. But if the 100 things don't solve anything, then why'd you deliver the 100 things? You need to get to the point where everything that you're doing is adding some form of value. And what I've discovered is that many teams forget about the sprint goal. They forget about that objective of providing value, and they often overlook this piece of the puzzle. So one more time, in case you missed it, number 6 was in understanding proper delivery. Number 5 was empowerment. Number 4 was adaptation. 3 was feedback. 2 was collaboration, and 1 was communication. Because we all know it's time for us to stop, collaborate, and listen. Famous words of Vanilla Ice. That's going to do it for this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We would love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.